Bible, and we're going to kind of a brief wrap up the lessons on stewardship tonight. January, we've spent quite a bit of time on stewardship, and we tried thinking, usually we'll have a missions month and then we'll have a stewardship month, and we thought let's put them all together, and that was a dumb idea. I'm not sure who thought of it, but whoever did, it was not good. Because it gave us, we did a halfway job on stewardship and a halfway job on missions, but I hope you're taking time to prayerfully make a decision about mission support, and everybody giving something to missions every week. If you only get paid once a month, do that. But if we would all, notice the word all, that's 3 little letters, but it's sure a big word. If we would all give something, it doesn't matter what, if we'd all be a part of it, it would make such a huge impact on the missions program around the world. And it gets, every year it gets closer and closer to home as more of our own young people are the ones we're sending. And you get over and see where some of our young people are living and what they're driving and what they're eating, and they love it. They just love it. But I think, man, a few more bucks could change everything for these young people as they rear their families across the world. Tanya and Israel, Tanya grew up on our buses. Israel grew up on buses, riding buses in L.A., and they built this beautiful house. Of course, the only running water is when you run to the well and get a bucket of it and bring it back to the house. And she is just as content as she could be, but we could make an impact. And like I said, more and more right now, at least 5 or 6 of our young people are either finishing up college, going to the mission field, or they are already getting support. They're done with college, married, getting support to go to the mission field. And anyway, this is, I think some of you think that's normal. Could I tell you, it isn't normal. It is not normal. There are churches that have never had 5 young people go off into the ministry in the lifetime of a church. And man, we are so blessed. And anyway, but with stewardship, in 1 Corinthians 4, we looked here a few weeks ago in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, and down at verse 2, it says, "Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful." So stewardship is, in the simplest form, faithfulness. That's just you want to take the word steward. What does it mean to be a good steward? Being faithful. That's what stewardship is. If you're 90 years old, being faithful is not the same as if you're 20 years old. Because we talk about stewarding our time and our talent and our treasure. We're all different, but we can all be faithful. We may all be, we may have different talents physically, what we're capable of doing. There are people that are very artistic, and people that are mechanical, and people that are just, they're good up in front. And then there are people who would love to have no one talk to them face to face. And by the way, God makes us that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But each of us does have a gift, and each of us has something we can do. And the key is this one simple word in verse 2, being faithful. We ought to be found faithful. So think through what you have. Many of you have a family. Many of you, most of you have a job. So that means a paycheck. Most of you, you're healthy enough, you're here tonight, and so you have that liberty to at least get out to church or to get out and be around God's people. And what is it that you can do? Some of you could get out on Saturday and spend 2, 3, 4 hours visiting young people and get them to ride a bus, and you can bounce around on a bus all Sunday and do just fine. Others of you, if you were on one bus for one Sunday, you'd be in a back brace for the rest of your life. And so we're all different like that. For you, we suggest you be the driver, because the drivers have air-conditioned, cushioned seats, the most comfortable spot. I didn't say what condition the air was in, it just was conditioned. Yeah, but anyway. So with that in mind, 3 quick points on on this matter of stewardship or faithfulness. Over in the book of Luke, if you want to go back, Matthew, Mark, and Luke chapter 6 in your Bible. Stewardship is giving. There are so many verses on giving. Luke chapter 6 and verse 38. Faithfulness is our summary word of the idea of stewardship. It is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. And so one area of faithfulness is this area of faithfulness in giving. Look at Luke 6:38. Some people might say, well, we don't have very much. That's why we start with Luke 6:38. 6:38, give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that you meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. Now, simple statement. Giving is a part of stewardship. Over in the book of Ephesians, it says that him that stole, steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing that is good, that he may have to give. There are so many verses, in fact, we'll look at that in a minute, but there are so many verses in the Bible that talk about work and be diligent so you can help others. I am not to be a vessel to retain what God has given me. I am to be a conduit, and it is to come from God to me, and it's to go out to others. And while I receive from God and I give to others, God can trust me to keep giving things to me because I keep giving it away. But as soon as I do this, then no more comes. God didn't give things to you to glory in. God gave things to me and to you, whether it be our musical talent or whether it be our money to use for his glory. Stewardship does not mean just giving. The fact is, if you gave all your money away, what that would make you is a crook, because you owe people. You owe your mortgage, you owe your electric bill, your gas bill, your water bill, you have insurance you owe. There are things you should be doing. You shouldn't give away your tithe money. We'll look at that in a minute, but in fact, if you want to look over there to Malachi, just real quick, because some people struggle with this, so let's look at it just to make sure they get struggled once more. Again, what would happen if everybody in a church tithed? Well, one thing would happen, you'd get a new pastor, because the one you have would die. If everybody in the church tithed, every bill would get paid, new buildings would be up, triple the mission support to every missionary we support, gather a bunch of missionaries to support, start more churches. That's just if everybody just tithed. And it's just a reality. And if you look there with me at the book of Malachi, chapter 3, Genesis, Exodus, Malachi, you'll find it. Anyway, it's toward almost to Matthew. Malachi, last book of your Old Testament. It's the only Italian book, Malachi. And chapter 3, look down at verse 10. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord, if I will not open to you the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And it's not a Bible study on tithing, it's just there. It's a reality. Abraham tithed when he came back from slaughtering the armies that attacked Lot, his nephew. And that was long before the law, long before Exodus chapter 20, when the law was given on Mount Sinai. There were already people tithing. And all the way up into the New Testament, Jesus said, you tithe mint and anise and these things ought ye to do, but don't leave the others undone, mercy and truth. He's adding, your heart ought to be a part of this thing. It's just not it's not just the outward, it is the inward. So giving is a natural part of the Christian life, but we want to skip over that. You understand that our church is generous, and I think we need to be generous. We're a blessed people. If you've not looked at the cars in the parking lot, you should. Just come late one Sunday. None of you normally do that, but leave early some Sunday and just walk around and look at the cars. When we started this church, I remember what the Beals were driving the first time they came out. Brett was 2, Caleb and Kara were in car seats, brand new newborn kids, and that was a beat up old, like a Chevy Nova, didn't you, brother? Yeah, that like an old Chevy Nova. It wasn't an old cool one like Joel Paul's. It was just an old Chevy Nova. But we all had beat up cars. I had a 2-tone car because it had been totaled in a wreck. And it had, it's the only fender we could find that fit at the junkyard was another color, and I couldn't afford to paint it. It was like a Southern car. One eye looked down and one eye looked up. Its parents had married too close. That was our church. That was our church. And Jerry and Linda Woolley moved out from Riverside, and they had a nice 4-door pickup, and that was the newest car in the place, and we all borrowed it. And, he said, I'd sell this truck and you eat so much gas, but what would everybody do without my truck? but we're blessed. Now, if we're going to be a steward, we're to be faithful with what we have. And to simply cling to the things we have is certainly not a matter of being good stewards. Look over to Ephesians, back in your New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians. Find Ephesians chapter 4, and that's the verse I mentioned earlier. And we're talking about being a good steward, and I am tonight speaking primarily Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians chapter 4. I am talking primarily about finances and our material possessions, kind of wrapping this up. But if we're talking about stewards, some of you work so many hours, and well, it's very difficult for you to work on a bus or teach a Sunday school class. You work and work and work, and somehow you've got to balance this thing. And while you find Ephesians 4 and hold on to it, if I get you to look here just for a second, if you were to take this whole platform and make it into your week, 168 hours, and if you've got children at home and you've got a job and you commute, and maybe you're the spouse, maybe you both have a job, you've got this whole thing here, but none of it should be ignored. Right? You work so much that you lose your marriage, what's the point of working? You work so much you lose your children, what's the point of all the work? You spend so much time with your children, you don't have a job and your kids go hungry, what's the point of that? If you spend all your time with your wife and your children and your job and you don't have any relationship with the Lord, then you're going to lose your family anyway. So what's the point of having the family? So you really need church. You need an area of ministry where you're giving for the cause of Christ. You need, if you're married, you need time with your spouse. You need time with your children if you still have children, or if you have children at home. You need your job to pay your bills. If you have a house, you got to take care of it. At some point, you got to change the oil in the car. And you got this big, there's a lot of responsibilities. If you have not sat down and listed those things, you probably should every now and then. Just the other day, I just took some time and I wrote down all my responsibilities in a given week. And I didn't do it by hour. I just did all the things that have to get done every single week in my life. And then you look at it and then you just cry and throw it away and you don't want to think about it. But you look at that and you could say, all right, well, I'm just not going to take care of the yard. If you have a house, you got to take care of the yard. Or you hire somebody to take care of the yard. But, no one wants their neighbor to just not take care of the yard. You'd ruin our property value, okay? And so there are just little things, and that's loving your neighbor as yourself. That's biblical Christianity. If you have a car, you probably need to take care of the car. If you have a house, there are things at your house you should take care of. Everything God has given you, you're to steward that thing. I think if you have a friend, you should be a good friend. If you have siblings, if you have parents that are still living, if you have whatever it is, look through that thing. Now, the pieces of pie may get smaller, but they should not be eliminated. Because if I just say, I just can't do it, I'm not being faithful. Now, it could be I've overcommitted myself. It could be I've said I will do things I cannot do, and maybe I've been unwise, and you may need to get an outside person's opinion on that. But you might be able to figure out, it's really funny. If you lay down your schedule and your responsibilities, and you get on your knees, or you just bow your head and say, God, what do you want me to do on this list? It's amazing what God will help you do. Like first, he might have you shut off the television. and disconnect from Facebook and Instagram and all the time wasters that do absolutely nothing. Nowhere in the Bible does it say be faithful to Facebook or faithful to watch your favorite team. This is just me, okay? I think the biggest losers in America are actors, musicians, and athletes. They're totally selfish, absolutely selfish. They're filthy rich, and they're godless. Now, there's a few exceptions, but you know that's true almost across the board. And you know what Christians do? Pay more money to see the godless, and they're unhappy. They couldn't have a relationship with a spouse for their life. Most of them, there's exceptions, I understand that. But the average athlete, the average actor, the average singer and musician, there's nothing in them that will help you be a better anything for God. And if you're busy, those things probably need to go. Unless you want to say, you know, we're going to, like I remember when Josh, our oldest, was leading the teen choir. Josh was 7th grade, I guess. We started playing flag football. And he and I threw a ball. We did lots of stuff together. But I realized we didn't have a TV. I realized he didn't know what a first down was. He didn't understand the concept. He could throw a ball. He could tackle somebody, just because every kid knows how to tackle somebody, unless he's a film. But anyway, but anyhow, shouldn't have said that. But anyhow, it's a reality. But so I said, we got to start watching football so you understand getting your 10 yards, you're down to 1 yard, you got to get that 1 yard, get your first down. So to me, that was a teaching tool. And it was some time, we never watched a full game. I bet never have we sat and watched a full game together. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong if you did, because Brother Beal, he and Mrs. Beal sit and watch full games together all the time. But I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm saying we didn't. But everybody's got to manage this thing. But don't just kick something out. It's so scary when someone says, you know what, let the school raise my kids, let the wife raise my kids, I just don't have time. They're yours, sir. That is your responsibility. And you'll stand before God accountable for those children. And you be involved. And obviously, you're gone a lot. You're working. A wife carries a great load at home. Even if she's working, she usually carries a great load at home. But every piece of that pie is an important part. And so we start thinking about this. You're in Ephesians 4. Look down at verse 28. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 28. It says, let him that stole steal no more. Isn't it great? He's talking about people who used to have a bad life. Isn't it great God includes people who have made a mess in their past in his book? I love that God's got all kinds of sinners in there. You know what? We could all fit. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good. Get a good job. Do something good with your life. Why should you get a job? So you could have nicer cars and nicer clothes. No. That he may have to give to him that needeth. And you might think, you know, I got a job. Let him go get a job. That's not Christ-like. Christ-like is you having and you helping. And so one area of the Christian life is work. And another area of the Christian life is taking some segment of what you get through your work and giving to others. It's just simple as that. That's good stewardship. Being faithful to others. Look over to 1 Thessalonians, just a few pages more toward the back of your Bible. 1 and 2 Thessalonians, and then Timothy. Find 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 11, and you study to be quiet and to do your own business and to work with your own hands as we commanded you, that ye may walk honestly toward them that are without, and that ye may have lack of nothing. Now verse 4:11 says, basically, I know some of you don't like the term, but shut up. Study to be quiet. Don't meddle in other people's business. Do your own business. Quit telling everybody else how to do things. You take care of your stuff and work. Work with your own hands as Paul the apostle says, as we commanded you, that, verse 12, that ye may walk honestly toward them that are without. You know all those people around us in the world? You go to the store, you buy something, you have something you buy there, you have a payment you make there. We are to work, we're to study to be quiet, we're to work so that we can have a good testimony. No child of God should have unpaid debts. Now, I've got a house payment, but they're happy with me. I pay 20% each month to the house payment and 80% each month to them, the greedy people, those greedy banks. But thank the Lord, I wouldn't have had the money to buy my house without some greedy bank. But that he says at the end of verse 12, though, not only am I to have a good testimony by paying my bills, he says that ye may have lack of nothing. Do you know you ought to work hard to take care of you? Young people, work. Get a job. Go to work. Don't mooch off your dad and mom your whole life. And every parent's got to decide when you want your kids out in the world working. I put my boys out working younger than my girls. I manage girls, I trust girls. Most people trust girls. They babysat, they taught piano, they did some things. They were earning money during high school. If I just say this to you parents, kids leaving high school, going to college should have a chunk of money saved up that they saved during high school. Somebody should start saving money 6th, 7th grade so that when they get to college, they don't have to show up at college and work 40 hours a week the day they get there. It's just hard on them. It's not wrong to do that, but it's just very difficult. And start praying. You parents of younger kids, start praying now. God will open doors up and find jobs and have opportunities come. And so he says we ought to work in verse 11 so that we in verse 12 will have a good testimony, and in verse 12 so that we'll have our needs met. Work so that you take care of you. Take care of your wife. Take care of your husband, spouse. Share the bills, however you do it. Take care of your children. And it's amazing, this society we're in, where we're not compassionate if we don't give everything away to everybody else. Now, I'm forgiving, but you know what? Go get a job yourself. We got grandpas and grandmas all over this church working, and here's some sorry rascal is wanting us to feed his lazy carcass. And I'll usually give him $1 or $2, but you know what? If you'll do what verse 11 says, you'll have lack of nothing. That's what God said. I'm not saying it. God said it. Work. That's one of the things that's wrong with drugs and liquor. They eat up your money, and they eat up your time, and they eat up your ability to do and to create and to become something. Nothing good comes from liquor. Nothing good comes from drug use. And unless you're going to the dentist and shoot me with a double, unless it's Novocaine or something like that. Look over to Proverbs. Proverbs in your Bible. We got to hurry because we need to stop a little early tonight. Proverbs. You find Proverbs right about in the middle of your Bible. Proverbs 10 says, "The labor of the righteous tendeth to life." Work hard, and it will tend to life. It will lean toward life. Go to work. Work long hours. Someone says you can't make enough money on a minimum wage job. You should have gone to school, got an education, so you're not working minimum wage. Now, I'm not picking on you, but get trained to do something. You don't have to have a college degree to make decent money. We've got people in our church that make very good money, but they learn to trade, they learn to skill, they learn to work with people, they learn to find that niche where no one else wanted to go and do what no one else would do. There is a way. Industry and diligence. You know one of the reasons we have candy sale at our Christian school? Because we need the money. But besides that, it is so good for our kids to have to tough it out. I was dropping some things off at the dry cleaner, and a gal that was in there talking to him, and I'm just waiting. And she's running one of these Girl Scout cookie things, and she said, if you sell 10,000 box of cookies, you get to go to Greece. But who wants to sell 10,000 box? But you know what? There's something to be said for digging in and gritting your teeth and making this thing happen. Our teenagers today, They go out soul winning. And you might say, I don't know how spiritual those kids are. I don't know either. But they at least went. How's their mom and dad doing? Anyway, I shouldn't be preaching on Wednesday night. But it's good for our young people to face difficulty and to face awkward and to face those, I don't want to do it. I really, go do it. Okay, I'll do it. Because that's life. Who wants to marry a girl who, when things are hard, she just curls up in a ball and whines? What a loser woman. You know what? Life's hard. And if you're going to be a decent mother and wife, you're going to have to face some difficulty. And if you shelter these little girls all their life, what good will they be? And could I say it's even worse when you shelter that little boy? He's going to have to marry a mama. And some stupid girl who's got this motherly instinct is going to marry this guy that's got a bunch of birds. He just needs me. Get a puppy. They'll need you too, and you can get rid of them when you don't want them anymore. Man, what a mess. You raise this boy, he doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to do hard things at work. He doesn't want to get up in the morning and go to work. What kind of a man is that? What a mess. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life, Proverbs 10:16 says. Work hard. And look, stewardship is not just throwing out money to people. It's planning. It's making decisions that won't destroy you. Because just like taking drugs will destroy me, there are foolish decisions that will destroy me. Amen. Yesterday in our senior seminar, I explained a very good man, a friend of mine, who before he was saved, he got married and had a couple of kids. That marriage failed. He's paying alimony and child support. Then he got married again, had a couple of more kids, divorced. He's paying alimony and child support. And then he's getting married or got married again. I'm not sure who'd marry him. I mean, he's a good guy. But look, the first almost 60% of we put, you adults that work, you know what I'm talking about here, but the kids don't. So I took the amount he's paying to the first wife, the amount he's paying to the second wife, and the amount of the government's taken. I mean, the government's taken 35%. And the first wife's taking 30, and the second wife's taking 20, and he's living on 15% of a good salary. You don't have to drink and smoke to be a mess. Good people get in those spots. Really good people. And you just have to dig out one day at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 year at a time, and slow and understand my liberty is not going to really come to fruition until 15 years from now. But by the way, 15 years comes pretty fast. We've been here 35. Do right and fight your way through it. But understand, we can make stupid decisions with drugs and liquor. We can make stupid decisions with investments and financial commitments. And boy, but the labor, work hard, do right, it tends to life. Proverbs 10:16. Go over to Proverbs chapter 13. Proverbs chapter 13. So number one, good stewardship is giving. I believe we ought to be giving. And again, I'm preaching to the crowd, to the choir here. You're generous, and thank God for your generosity. Let's keep it up. We ought to be generous people. But we ought to work. And there's so many verses. If you don't think your kids are quite diligent enough, go through the book of Proverbs every day and you and your kids memorize verses on diligence and hard work and labor. It just really, there's some battles in this life. And wonderful, godly Christians can get into this situation that just is horrible. And but what do? They labor and they be diligent and they get out of them. Because with God's help, you can get out of any problem. I love the story of a guy years ago that we met. We just got some of his preaching, and he'd gotten the wrong crowd. He's in the wrong place. He didn't do anything wrong, but he was with some guys who shot somebody, and the guy died. And he didn't know about it. He was in the car. They went to the store, and they were taking some food, and they pulled a gun out, shot somebody, ran in the car, said, man, we got to get out of here. And he didn't even get out of the car and took off, and then they turned him in, said, yeah, he's the one who did it, and he went to prison. And he was in prison for life. And in there, he told God, you get me out of this, I will serve you, but if you don't get me out of it, I'll serve you as best I can. And in a miracle, one of those guys got feeling so guilty, he admitted that they'd lied, and he got out of jail, and he's been a preacher ever since. And man, how God will deliver us, but sometimes it could be a little long haul. So back into Proverbs now. Not only should we give, not only should we work hard, but if you look at Proverbs 13, look down at verse 10. Proverbs 13 and verse 10. It says, only by pride cometh contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. With the well-advised is wisdom. Don't lose your place there. There is something to be said in stewardship of getting good advice. And there's so many. Look at verse 22. Go down just a couple of verses more. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinners laid up for the just. Now, the well-advised, with the well-advised, Proverbs 13 says there's wisdom. So here I am. I'm going into life, and here's someone else, and they're going into life. And they are maybe not as self-assured as I am, and they're careful, and they ask, and they get direction, and they get advice from people that know more, and people that have been down the road before them. And their path is a path of wisdom. I do the exact same thing they do as far as day to day. I got the same grades in school, and I've got the same academic prowess. We're both dumb as a rock, and I go into life, but I'm just sure I can figure it out on my own. Their path will be one of wisdom, and my path will be one of folly. So number one tonight, if you're going to be a good steward, you need to give. Stewardship, we've got to be giving. We've got to care about others. Number two, we ought to work. But number three, we need to plan. We really do need to plan. We need to plan. And some of you, you're very good at planning finances, and your retirement is settled, and your future, and your estate, and your trust, and all that stuff's in good order. Have you planned for the judgment seat, though? When's the last time you reached in your pocket and pulled out a gospel tract and told somebody Jesus loved them? Or do you just plan for this life? You see, a good steward plans for the whole pie. You can have all your money in order and lose your wife. I'm the little league coach. Man, me and the kids, we're tight. And the old lady back home, don't go there. That one flesh thing, you need to guard that. And in being a steward, it takes a plan. And the good man in verse 22 will leave an inheritance to his children's children. There ought to be planning that you can do for others. I think it's a wonderful thing to care for our kids. Look down at Proverbs chapter 11. Go over Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 16. Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 16. A gracious woman retaineth honor. Boy, can you tell that most of the people in Hollywood aren't gracious? Because they got no honor. Their honor is like my language, my English skills. But look at the end of verse 16. A gracious woman retaineth honor, and strong men retain riches. Teaching our young people from childhood to not spend it all. Everybody's got to do this however you want, but when our kids would go somewhere and they needed money, we'd say, come home with some of it. And I'd say this, strong men retain riches. You don't have to spend everything in your wallet. It's okay to come home and still have some. It's okay to give dad back some. Or I'd say whatever you don't spend, you can keep, but if you spend it all, you won't get any next time. Work out deals with your kids. Train them. See, being a good steward is giving and working and planning. I am to plan how to raise my children. I am to plan how to have a good marriage. I am to plan, it wouldn't hurt at all if we tried to figure out what would help my spouse be happier. What could I do? Plan that thing. I think if you can't steward your marriage, you're missing something. If you're married, if you're not married, steward those relationships that are around you. Daniel and Joseph both proved to us that under very difficult circumstances, you can be a steward that is lifted up and promoted into a position of esteem. God will bless those people who stay close to him and who walk with him and honor him. Stewardship is giving. Stewardship is working hard, but stewardship is having a plan. Thinking through this thing. I believe the plan ought to be multiple. Way out here in the future, plan for the judgment seat of Christ. Have a plan. All right. Then plan here. Plan for your days when you're not able to get around. I was at the hospital today with Dick and Joanne Ardrey, and Dick's in a walker with a seat in it, and Joanne's laying there in the bed getting ready to go in for surgery. And I thought, man, I'm planning. I want to know where the pillow is. Man, she is hurting today, and I think I'm not man enough to hurt like Joanne Ardrey's hurting today. But we should plan. Our bodies are temporary. We should plan. And it'd be nice if the trumpet came before something happened. But you know what? People have been thinking that for 2,000 years. There's a good chance you're going to get old. And there's a good chance your body, you should have a trust and an estate and a medical directive and all those things in order. You and your spouse should talk about, what are you going to do? What should your wife do? What can she do if you go to heaven prematurely? Have a plan for those things. Plan how to raise your children. Plan how those kids are going to grow up and honor God. If you have your kids grow up and those kids all go off the devil, that's not honoring God. Now, in some cases, that's past tense. We can't undo it. But if you have children at home, make a plan. Make a plan. A prudent man. Daniel and Joseph, they made plans. Strong men, talks about retaining riches. Says he becometh poor in Proverbs 10:4. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand. But the hand of the diligent maketh rich. Diligence isn't just hard work. Diligence is smart work. Figure where to go and what to do and how to do it and what can I do with this little bit. And you know what? Where we started in Luke chapter 6 verse 38, give and it shall be given to you. If I just got a little, well, I'm sure not going to keep it all. I might have less next month. I want to make sure I give a little bit. And in Proverbs, he that giveth to the poor lendeth to the Lord, and that which he hath given will he give again. And it's so important, so very important we learn to give. It's so important we learn to work hard at what we're doing. I think, and some of you young men, I think some of you have taught about pastoring and being in the mission field. Can I just tell you something? If you don't like long hours and hard work, just go get a job in the world. Because the ministry is long hours and hard work, and you got to always like everybody. That may be the hardest part of the ministry. Hi, it's so good to see you. Got to get that Joel Osteen look on your face. No, you got to hate something if you're going to love God. But somewhere along the way, stewardship. Think about the whole thing. What is it you have? How can you be a steward of it? Let's be faithful. Look, this is your church. Let's be faithful to our church. All right. And let's pray. Father, bless us. Direct these couple minutes as we close here. Thank you for our church and how good you've been to us. And we love you. We're honored that we could be here. And we do ask that you'd help us be faithful to our homes, to our jobs, to our church, and guide and direct. And some of our folks are rebuilding. Give them grace to rebuild. Give them that grace that as they dig deep and work through, that you'll reward them with great blessings tomorrow. There's too many promises for us to be defeated. You're a rebuilding, you're a healing God. Do it for your people, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, can't leave. There's